This is a clip from the Garbage Time Podcast. To listen to the full show, click the links to our Apple Podcast or Spotify below. I want to play the quarterback matchmaker. So we all work at KWVA radio station in Eugene. Me and Ryan, I think, were the ones who did this quarterback matchmaker segment on our radio show there. And we're going to bring it back. But except this time, we actually have the matches made. We're just going to decide if it's a good match or not a good match. So we'll just start from the top. Joe Burrow, number one. Match or not a match?
Well, I mean, you made the video about this, Scott, a few days ago. I don't think it's a match. I agree with you. If you haven't checked out that video, go do it because you pointed out a lot of great points in that video. Of
Bengals fans don't think so. They're real big into defending their 2-14 squad that hasn't won a playoff game in 20 years.
I loved your video. I was blown away by how fantastic it was. And you pointed out all of the points of why Joe Burrow probably wouldn't fit that well in Cincinnati. If he goes to a team that has the core around him or a nice coaching staff or a good front office, then he has a chance or a much better chance of having a much better relationship. I just don't see it in Cincinnati.
I'm mixed about it. I think Burrow's going to be a superstar. I think he's going to be great no matter where he ended up. Just based on that last year at LSU, he's one of the best college quarterbacks we've ever seen. I think you need a real swagger. You need a real confidence to succeed in the NFL, and that's why I like Burrow, and I'm not as big on Herbert. But with that being said, there's some positives and negatives to him ending up with the Bengals. I think a positive is that Zach Taylor he comes from Sean McVay's totem pole, and he wants to run a more modern offense. He wants to throw the ball around, and that's exactly what Joe Burrow did at LSU last year. And there's some real weapons with the Bengals. I mean, John Ross, Joe Mixon, A.J. Green if he can stay healthy, Tyler Eifert if he can stay healthy. So the Bengals have some players. On the other hand, Joe Burrow's walking into what I think is one of the two best divisions in football, walking in with the Browns, who now with their offensive tackle, another great pick last night, I think they have a complete roster. The Ravens, who I think are one of three best teams in football, and we'll get to the Niners and the Chiefs later, but I think it's those three. And then it's the Steelers, who are always going to be good no matter who's on their roster. And those are three of the best defenses on paper in the entire NFL. So I think in that aspect, he's going to struggle a little bit, and he's going to be playing from day one, unlike some of these other quarterbacks.
So here's kind of the gist of my Joe Burrow video that I just released. Quarterback success in the NFL, I think, is almost entirely circumstantial. There's a reason that these guys getting drafted in the first round are getting drafted in the first round. Like, they are talented guys who have the ability to be great NFL quarterbacks. But in the NFL, just talent alone does not win you games, and it does not bring you success. You have to have the backing of a good owner, a good coach, a good coordinator, good players around you, good management. Everything kind of has to fall into place. We've seen quarterbacks that aren't as talented really succeed because of the backing they have, and we've seen ultra talented quarterbacks fail because of the backing they don't have. And Cincinnati, they're kind of in the midst of starting a new regime. It really just started last year with the Zach Taylor era there, but I just haven't liked what I've seen so far. He was the quarterback's coach for 1 year in Los Angeles when they made the Super Bowl. Sean McVay's offense has proven to be very stoppable last year, and I'm not going to write off Zach Taylor yet, but just based off the fact that he's supposed to be a coach that's going to change your offense and be a dynamic air raid, and they were 30th in the year last year, or 30th in the league last year in their passing attack, I'm not all in on the Zach Taylor train. So I don't like the backing that Joe Burrow has right now. He's an ultra-talented quarterback, and there's a reason he was the number one overall pick of this draft, but I think he's set up to fail in Cincinnati. He could very well overcome it. Many quarterbacks have, but it's just not that likely and not that common.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Scott. I think, unfortunately for him, he's going to, like I said, he's going to walk into one of the best divisions in football, one of the most physical divisions in all of football, and he's going to have to start from day one. And that could, I mean, maybe they had a backup.
To add to that point, Sean, you've mentioned how the Bengals have some weapons at the skill positions, which they do.
They're all injury prone, though.
Yeah. Can they stay healthy? That's another question. But they do have weapons. But the thing is, not only is the AFC North maybe the best division in football right now, but they also have by far the best defensive lines, and the Bengals have by far the worst offensive line in that division. Joe Burrow is going to be under duress all season long. To me, this is absolutely not a match. But let's go ahead and let's move to the next quarterback taken. That's Tua to the Dolphins. I personally love this pick. I think Brian Flores is one of the brightest young head coaches in the NFL. Tua's obviously an ultra-talented player. Reminds me of like a Russell Wilson, Drew Brees hybrid, just a guy who can move around in the pocket, deliver short darts all day, make accurate throws, precision passes all day long. I like this move for the Dolphins. Obviously, the question mark is can he stay healthy, but I think that's a risk you've got to take with the talent like Tua. To me, this is an absolute match and maybe the best match of the draft in general.
I think it's going to be a match. I think right now, this season, it's not a match because I don't think Tua will play. I think that what Brian Flores has done with the roster the last 2 years has been, or the last, just over a year, has been assemble it to really fit what he wants to do, but he's not there yet. He's not 100% to what he wants his roster to be, and that will take another year or two to complete. Once this Dolphins roster is Brian Flores' team, then I think it will be a match. Right now in this transition period, I think it'd be smart for Tua to sit and for Ryan Fitzpatrick to come in and be that bridge. But once this team is fully assembled, I think it will absolutely be a match.
It was the perfect pick for the Dolphins, a franchise that's been struggling for about 20 years. As a Dolphins fan, they haven't really been relevant my entire life. They needed a guy who was going to bring some excitement to the city, a guy that maybe could miss, but if he hit, was really going to hit and really going to be something special, because you got to keep in mind, they just said goodbye to Tannehill, who was pretty average for all those years. He wasn't necessarily bad, but he was pretty average. And so they're not looking for average. They're not looking for the safe pick, maybe Justin Herbert, who has a certain ceiling. They're looking for a potential superstar. And so if he doesn't hit, I think the Dolphins are still going in the right trajectory. But I think this pick has a very high ceiling, and it's good for Tua because he's walking into a situation with Ryan Fitzpatrick, a guy that the Dolphins could put in the starting lineup, and if he has the right guys around him, Ryan Fitzpatrick can win you 9 or 10 games easily. He can make you a playoff team by him starting at quarterback. And so Tua can be patient. He can recover his hip, and maybe he'll play in the latter half. But like you said, Ryan, he might just take a gap year next year and kind of learn under Fitzpatrick, and we'll see what they do with Rosen. But I definitely think it's the right pick for a franchise that's been struggling for all these years.
First of all, poor Josh Rosen. Guy never really even got a chance in the league. And all right, so we'll move on to Justin Herbert. You already mentioned him, and he got drafted number 6 overall by the Los Angeles Chargers. That still feels weird to say. And I actually really like this pick. Now, we all three go to the University of Oregon, and while Justin Herbert was at Oregon, I wasn't the biggest Herbert guy. He has the talent. He has a big arm. All the potential is there, but he just never really actually did that much. The results didn't show themselves at the University of Oregon. And I do like this pick for the Chargers. I think Herbert is a guy that at the end of the day, above all else, is a guy that if you have a good system and you have good backing, you have good management, you have good players, Justin Herbert can come in and run that as good as anybody in the league. I don't think, like Sean said, I don't think he's going to ever be an MVP caliber guy who is lighting it up and a game changer himself. But I think he's a lot like a Phillip Rivers was in the San Diego Chargers. He's just a guy who's going to keep you afloat. He's eventually not going to make a lot of mistakes. He's going to run your system well, and he's going to be more than a good enough quarterback, but kind of like a good enough quarterback. You know what I'm saying? I think he gives the Chargers a really good chance to win for a long time. They have a lot of those layers of the pyramid with the ownership, the management, the players, the coordinators that I was talking about. They have a lot of those really solidly in place, so I think this is a match.
As you guys know, I've been comparing Justin Herbert to Josh Allen for a long time now, since about the middle of the season during his senior year. And that's still exactly where I think the comparison is. I think that he's Josh Allen. We saw with Josh Allen this year, he can succeed in a good system with a good defense. And Josh Allen didn't even have the weapons that the Chargers do. He was working with John Brown and Cole Beasley out there on the outside. Justin Herbert, he's inheriting Keenan Allen. He's inheriting Mike Williams, Hunter Henry. He's getting a very, very solid team around him, not to mention on the defensive end that can carry him with Derwin James and Joey Bosa. So I think that this is the type of team that Herbert can use to be successful. Will he be a Super Bowl winning quarterback anytime soon? Probably not. But he will be a guy that is serviceable enough to not lose you enough games to fall out of the playoff race.
I want to comment on that real quick, Ryan, that can he be a Super Bowl winning quarterback? I slightly disagree on that aspect. I think the NFL, the salary cap league that it is right now, it's so important to have that quarterback on the rookie contract to build the contending team around him. And I think the Chargers have a very, very good roster around him, and they can win this year as long as Herbert becomes a serviceable guy who doesn't make a ton of mistakes, if he even is the actual starter. There's other options that they have. But with this Chargers team, I think these next few years are going to be their best chance to win a Super Bowl, because once you have to pay that quarterback, your other resources become very slim in terms of how much money you can allocate into them. So I think if they're going to win, it's going to be in these next few seasons.
I completely agree. I think that I should probably have rephrased. I don't think he's going to be the quarterback that will lead the team to the Super Bowl, but he can be the quarterback on a Super Bowl team, if you put it that way.
It's a great situation for Justin Herbert. I mean, he's just going to the neighboring state in California. He's lived in Eugene his entire life, and now he gets to live in LA. Unlike Joe Burrow, he's not walking into such a physical division like the AFC North. Instead, he's walking into the AFC West with the Broncos, the Raiders, the Chiefs. Maybe not as physical defensive.
There's only one known team that we know what we're going to get in that division.
The Chiefs. Yeah, so he's not walking into the best division, and he gets to be in LA. He gets to be on the West Coast. He's not going to Jacksonville or Miami, so it's not going to be too new. He gets to learn under Tyrod Taylor for a year, which is a good situation for him as well. And I think the Chargers, although, I have my questions about whether they should be in LA, whether they have fans. By the way, another very funny part of the draft last night was the fact that the Chargers had 10 fans and not 12. They had to fill the two of the Zoom screens with the Chargers logo. He's walking into that organization, but I still think it's a really functional organization. They have some really good players. Derwin James, Joey Bosa, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler is a name that you guys didn't mention. I mean, they have some really, really good weapons, really good players. And the last thing I want to say about Herbert is I think beside the football aspect of him, which certainly has its weaknesses, I think the biggest concern for Herbert that I had was just he was kind of like the opposite of Burrow, and the fact that Burrow walks around with the swagger, the confidence, and it translates to the field. Herbert always kind of seemed like, he seemed a little nervous at times. He didn't really show up in the biggest of games. The Rose Bowl performance was rather impressive, but you look at Auburn, didn't really show up. He didn't take over that game. Even Washington, Jacob Eason was probably better than him that game. The Civil War, it was 30 degrees that day. It was absolutely miserable, and he played like it. He played miserably. And so he's lucky that he's going to LA. He's not going to be playing in Lambeau very often. He's not going to be playing against the Ravens or the Steelers. He's playing in a division that I think is kind of like Oregon, kind of like the Pac-12. He's not walking into like an SEC type division.
Yeah, I mean, you guys all made great points there. We'll see how Herbert does. We already touched on Jordan Love, but more of the relationship between Rodgers, Packers, and Jordan Love, that aspect of things. But let's touch on how Jordan Love actually will fit on this Packers team long term. Is this a match or is this not?
I think it's up in the air at this point. I think that if he stays in Green Bay and gets to start maybe 3 years from now, it's the perfect match because he has a well-established team, a well-established franchise, and he's going to get to learn from one of the best quarterbacks of all time. But if he doesn't necessarily get the opportunities that he's looking for, then he could be in a situation where he doesn't really ever get the chance to shine, almost like a Josh Rosen is, where he's bounced around and is maybe the starter but doesn't really get a chance to fully flourish. So it's going to determine a lot on what is going to happen to Aaron Rodgers throughout his career. But if Jordan Love is the quarterback of the Packers in 3 years, then I think that it is a good fit.
It's not a good situation because of Aaron Rodgers. I think you look at what Patrick Mahomes walked into. Alex Smith was there. Alex Smith isn't even close to Aaron Rodgers, both on a personality standpoint. I think Alex Smith is a much more selfless, generous person who is willing to mold Patrick Mahomes. And Alex Smith also isn't that great of a quarterback. I mean, he was kind of on his way out. And so Patrick Mahomes walked into that. Jordan Love, on the other hand, is walking into, Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, who's still only 36 years old. You'd think he has 5 more years left to play. He's not the nicest guy from what we've heard. I don't think he's going to be willing to help Jordan Love as much as an Alex Smith would. So it would be a good situation if Rodgers was older or if it wasn't Rodgers, because I think the Packers are a great organization. I think LaFleur is a great coach. And I think Love has potential, but I think it's just a weird situation to be walking into with Aaron Rodgers kind of not in his prime, but maybe just out of his prime, still playing some good football. And, with his personality, I think it's a little awkward.
For me, I can't definitively say if this is going to be a match or not going to be a match right now, only because I think time is going to tell with this thing. We don't really know what the relationship is going to look like 6-7 months from now when the season is in full swing. We don't know what it's going to look like in a year or 2 or 3 from now. Like Sean said, the Packers are a great organization, and if there is a quarterback that's a little iffy that you don't know for sure what they are, the Packers are absolutely an organization you would want them to go to because they will bring out the best in him. But I just worry that Jordan Love might be finding his way to another team maybe in the next couple of years, because I think if anybody's going to win this thing, if it becomes a confrontation, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the point that I was trying to get at a little bit is if Jordan Love is out alphaed by Aaron Rodgers, then it's not going to bode well for the overall career of Jordan Love.